Today is the third day of the April 1985 7-day retreat. We may or may not get to a koan later on, but we will first take up several things that have come up in meetings. One thing that was forgotten to be mentioned at the very beginning of this retreat during the first talk is that please find a very comfortable position in which to listen to the talk. If sitting on the floor is not as comfortable as sitting on a chair, to get a chair, or to change the posture in any which way during the talk, and if possible, quietly, so one doesn't disturb the people sitting around one. If one sits next to someone who needs to change the posture, how does one listen to the noise? Is it a disturbance? Does it cause irritation? Can one see that instantly and listen again just to the sound? The sound of the rustling of clothes and bones, and the sound of the irritation within, without passing judgment here or there. Is it possible? Having just asked the question, I want to say something about asking questions in meetings or during a talk. Sometimes people will tell me that I make a lot of assertions and statements during a talk. How can it be conveyed that I do not intend to make any assertions, but rather speak from what is seen within this mind to be so? I may be wrong. Then please bring it up in meetings and we'll look at it anew, afresh. What is said is not said to persuade or convince anyone of anything. It is said so that maybe we can look at something together which is happening in the human mind, not in my personal mind. There are personal idiosyncrasies and experiences, elements in each of us, but this is not what is being talked about. What is talked about is what is fundamental to the human mind, so that each one may observe it if one is so inclined. If one does not wish to do it, or if there is resistance to doing it, then we will not be communicating with each other. So what is being said is not said as an assertion, but as something that is seen to be actually, factually so. But I may be wrong. It is for each one of us to verify and validate within oneself whether what is said is actually so, and then only then does this work become meaningful and alive and vital. Because in the process there is a discovery of the human mind, and maybe the possibility for ending of mechanicalness and unaware living, unaware repetitive living. And in its place, an awareness of what is going on, a profound awareness. Being in touch with what is actually so, inside and out. In the course of the many talks that are being given, some 8 or 9 retreats a year, times 7. Outside of retreat, 3 or 4 talks. There is a tremendous amount of repetition that goes on. Or what seems to be repetitiveness, people sometimes say, you always say the same thing, it's so repetitive. Because it is basically the same thing that is being looked at. What is seen to be the cause of human division, feelings of isolation, separation, and antagonism. And looking at it to wonder whether, if this is seen and understood, whether we can live in a different kind of relationship with each other, not one of competitiveness or confrontation, but rather mutual understanding. So even though the words and sentences and things may sound repetitive and are repetitive, as they are said, a lot of times they do not come out of memory, trying to remember, what did I say, that was really quite good, let me say that again, how did I put it? Or having schemes and formulas that sort of are being set in motion and mouthed. It is rather a looking afresh. The language is limited, words are limited. Maybe if I knew 10 languages and could use all these, there would be a little bit larger vocabulary, because each language has some words that another one doesn't have. But how does one receive what is being said? If there is the feeling, oh, she said this so many times, how many more times will I have to listen to this? How does one listen? How is one listening? What is the very process of listening when these feelings come up? Is this worth investigating? I think it is, but it is up to each one of us whether one will really do it. Is oneself engaged in the repetitive mode of the brain, where one remembers what is being said and compares what is being said now with what is already recorded as a memory? And then the evaluation is, this is repetition. Or will one disregard what one has already heard, not as an act of will or intention, but because one is attending carefully, intensely, and therefore maybe listen to what is said as for the first time and look. Open to what is said, not in order to adopt it, follow it, believe in it, but open up, and then maybe what is said and what is heard refers to the same thing in 2 or more individuals. We're then communing at the same place. And it's no longer a matter of her versus me, her personal experiences versus my personal experiences. It is communing on a fundamental level of the human mind. The mind of fear, anxiety, separation, isolation, wanting to be, wanting to become, fear of not being, fear of dying, and so forth. It is these things that are being looked at again and again. Is it possible for the mind to be attentively, openly listening in such a way that not all the old tapes are playing, which compare, or which already know? If one answers, yes, it's possible, one may say, she has said this is possible. Or if one says, no, it's not possible, one may remember, she said it isn't possible. To be very discerning what one adds to a question, how one answers it, and then remembers it as a statement which was not made. Do you see that? Sometimes in a talk it is mentioned what somebody said in order to look at it. It is something very general, very applicable to all of us. And then someone else will say, you said such and such. It so quickly happens that one has missed something and the memory becomes distorted. This is what memory is. It is a very limited and often not accurate recording of something that is not totally received but partially listened to. And one listens partially because the mind is occupied or weighed down with many other things. Or just there is a resistance to listening to what may be painful, and so thought wanders off and maybe returns in the middle of a sentence. That is being said. So can one be distrustful of memory? It's the best thing is to listen right here and look right now. What one carries out of the door is very partial and limited. But if a question remains, if a doubt arises, we can bring it up. We don't have to remember what we said here. We can start new, because this mind is always there to be looked at. And there's no movement of it, no action or function of it that is not worth looking into with great accuracy and intensity. Because after all, what are we here for? We may be here for many different reasons, many different personal reasons. One may just love to take a week off from the tremendous pressures and hecticness of one's daily life, the lack of time and space, come to this place to breathe, have time for walks and sit quietly, not hear sounds of traffic, voices, radio. It's really up to each one what one comes here for. And this is not being dictated to or subtly imposed. If you feel this is so, please let us talk about it. But in these talks, the concern that I feel most deeply and most seriously is to understand the human mind, to know oneself from moment to moment, not from past experiences, that's already gone, but now from moment to moment, so that compulsiveness, mechanicalness, impulsiveness is irradiated with attention, awareness. So that one can plumb this mind deeply, what the root of all these reactions and emotions are. The very root of our living, the root of life itself, which may be discovered in oneself as one lives from moment to moment. So one does not live in darkness, in blindness and ignorance of what is actually happening within a human being and among human beings, which can so easily give way to a fatalism. It's just the way we are. It's human nature to be at each other's throats. We come from the animal after all. I'm quoting. I'm not saying this is so. I'm wondering whether it has to be this way. And yet one can't set up ideals and strive toward those. One has to look. And this looking is painful. It's not a joyride. To look within oneself deeply, without deceiving oneself, without resisting, may bring real pain of discovering ugliness within oneself. I'm not saying that judgmentally. Discovering jealousy, envy, greed, a so long suppressed violence, anger, and to really see it maybe for the first time in its totality, not just in its surface expressions, but to trace out anger, which all of us know, inside and outside of retreat. What is the surface situation that brings it out? And then one's immediate impulse to give explanations for it. Maybe it was the other. Usually on the surface we look for fault in the other person who made one angry. Or one excuses one's anger as being one's inherited temperament. My parents were already angry. Or the way one has been raised. Sort of analyzing it and finding causes for it. All the while not really looking at anger, how it manifests, how it affects the whole organism and the organism of the other person with whom one is in an anger relationship. The rushing of the blood, the throat gets constricted, one may shake. One cannot perceive very well when one is angry. It seems to be a real narrowing of the senses. Can't see the mountains and the clouds. It's also irrelevant. The anger is pervading every cell of the body. To really see that, be in touch with it, without any idea, I shouldn't be angry, I should control it, or it's somebody else's fault, just to have the attention come in. Is that possible? Mostly it's only possible afterwards, but at least afterwards to really look at it, evoke it and see it. Or maybe before it even wells up, it's possible to look, or during. And look, what is it that gets angry within one? If it isn't the sense of me, my way has been crossed, thwarted, and the expectation that we have since we've been little children that the world around us should conform to the way we want it for our own well-being. And the world around us does not conform most of the time to the way we want it, because each one has that same expectation. And try to get it, push for it. So we push and pull against each other all the time. Not all the time, but a time of anger. And to not even stop there. This self with its expectations, needs, hurts, images. The image is so important. How could he treat me like that? It's so unfair. I deserve better. I didn't treat him like that. And in the anger, one is willing to treat him like that, as to pay back. Also programmed into the human mind, the tit for tat. Mentioned in the Bible, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. What is this self that gets angered or envious, jealous? Is it just images? Don't take over this as a statement or an assertion. It's not made as an assertion. One has to look. And is one willing to look? Or is that something that doesn't concern one? Or is it too painful? Too strenuous, too intense? One may say, I don't get angry very much, it is not a problem for me. Well, then it's not a problem. But if it does arise, how will one meet it? On the surface or going all the way, trying to get to the root bottom of it. Which means going to the root bottom of jealousy, greed, envy. It's all the same. It's all the same root. Fear, wanting. And is that root there to stay, unshakable, inevitable, forever? As these are all assumptions. One doesn't know. One can question. One is free to question that. Whether the self, in all its manifestations, all its images, is something we're going to be born with, we're going to live with, and we're going to die with it. Or whether in the seeing of it, in the attention to the totality of it, and the attention not being partial but total, all of oneself given to the inquiry or the looking, whether the self can dissolve. One doesn't know the answer to this. Or one may say, I have experienced it in the past. I know it is so. But that's not enough. It has to happen as anger is about to flare up. Not it has to happen. Can it happen? It may not. This reminds me right now of another question or something that was brought up in a meeting where someone said, when I hear a statement like you read in the poem, which was when useless things don't clutter the mind, every day is a good day. When I hear that, and please, I'm not quoting accurately, I don't remember how the person put it. I'm putting it now in my own words. The feeling was, when I hear that, I get the feeling, oh my God, my mind is always cluttered. How can I get rid of it? Or a feeling of guilt or shame or depression that I can't get rid of this clutter. The poet did, and maybe a few people in here do, but I'm not up to it. It's not for me. Because look at this mind, it's constantly cluttered. In reading that, it would have been good to make a comment on this immediately. Not to listen to this as a standard set up, the uncluttered mind to be reached within 7 days or sooner. But to wonder about the clutter, that's the first step. One may say, I have no clutter, then that's no problem. And one may not be looking. But if there is the feeling of a clutter, can it be discerned, seen? Tracked down? Is there a constant theme in it? And when one wakes up to the fact that there has been reverie, daydreaming, fantasy, there's a moment of attention where this comes into awareness, which is a moment of attention. If there wasn't this moment of attention, the reverie would continue, maybe along a different track, and then a different track, and then again another one. But no gap in it of awareness that this is going on. So if there is this moment of awareness, which is really a marvelous thing, an amazing thing, that one isn't totally caught in it. That there is awareness, yeah. I've been dreaming. Then what happens immediately is there just awareness listening to the breathing, the flapping of plastic, or the birds, or somebody walking around, or just silence? Or does one bear down on oneself? remembering the poem. There shouldn't be this clutter. And in looking at it right now, does one see that such thoughts, I shouldn't have clutter because Mumon said something, that this itself is clutter, is more thought, and has already swamped the awareness. The awareness of just what was going on. This is the simplicity of it. In this connection with awareness, another question comes to mind that people occasionally ask and have found helpful if it is talked about, which is, what is the difference between awareness and concentration? Many people report in talking about what's going on when one is sitting that the concentration is good, or the concentration was better yesterday, or better today than yesterday, or something interrupted my concentration. What is concentration? What is going on in the mind when we say we concentrate? One can even go one step before that and say, why does one concentrate the mind? Try to concentrate the mind. Is there already a motive? If I concentrate my mind on such and such, I may attain such and such an experience or capacity, which comes from what one has heard or been taught or told. And it sounds attractive or like a way out of one's problems to learn to concentrate the mind, which implies also control. A lot of us feel that we don't have enough control over this mind. It does things to us, and if I only learn to control this mind and concentrate it, it may not do all these undesirable or unexpected things. So, concentrating, one may have been told, or it may have been suggested to one to count one's exhalation and inhalation and to concentrate on that. Maybe as a next step to drop counting the inhalation and just counting the exhalation, as a means of concentrating the mind energies, which otherwise will just dart into all the fantasies and dialogues, memories that it usually does. During the last workshop we held, for the first time we dropped suggesting the counting to people, because it has something artificial to it. I mean, who counts the inhalations and exhalations normally? And it is sort of imposing something upon something that's natural, that's there. And finding a crutch in that counting, even though sometimes it's a very extended crutch, one may find one is at 139, has long passed the 10, and the mind is quite able to do what it wants to do and count at the same time. So, in dropping the counting and just attending to the awareness, thus one conceive of that as an exercise in concentration, which goes with giving oneself orders. I must concentrate on my breathing. I must not become distracted. So concentration on something, either the breathing or a spot in the body, or repeating of a mantra or syllable of some sort, implies immediately the resistance against distraction. Which means the mind, as it is trying to concentrate, is placed in a conflict with all that is not the stuff one is concentrating on. So one is torn between concentrating and being distracted. And then all that follows, being down on oneself, getting discouraged, comparing oneself to others who seem to be concentrating so much better, one thinks. If one is successful, and different people have different abilities to concentrate the mind, it seems to be like a talent almost with some people. Like talent for mathematics, I think inevitably goes with a talent to concentrate the mind. If one has that capacity to concentrate on a visual image or idea or inhalation, exhalation, or a word, energy gathers in this concentration. One can develop terrific energies with it, which may be very helpful for many reasons. For runners or skiers, athletes definitely have to concentrate in order to accomplish the feats that they do. The mind was distracted left and right. One wouldn't run a mile that fast. Concentration, this concentrative energy, can also be used to control other people, other people's minds. It lends itself for all kinds of uses and misuses. But if one doesn't have quite the talent, there's the constant struggle with distraction. Labeling something as distraction which may beckon to be looked at, attended to. And this is where awareness or attention fundamentally differs from concentration. It does not label whatever comes up as a distraction, but the question immediately is, can one attend to it, see what it is? If thought patterns, reveries, daydreams take over the mind, then there's no attention, that's clear, and there's inattention. The mind is living in these thoughts as though they were real. And then if there's a moment of attention, does one see that these were just thoughts? without labeling it distraction or whatever. It merits no label. It's just what it was. It was a train of thoughts. And even that doesn't have to be labeled. One can see at a glance what was going on in the mind at a moment of attention. And why isn't that sufficient? Why does it need evaluation or comment or comparison? But if that happens, isn't that too worthy of noting, worthy of seeing? Yeah, the mind is constantly comparing me with others, me with the way I used to be, or with the way I would like to be. Isn't that enormously significant to discover? The mind is incessantly comparing and therefore creating all kinds of emotional states, because any kind of thought is linked up with our whole emotional, glandular organ system, muscular. You can watch that one painful or joyful or jealous or angry thought flitting through the mind can set the whole organism going. So in attending, there need to be no battle with distractions. What are they? What's their nature? What's their root? All becomes food for inquiry. So that the mind opens up and reveals itself. Without anybody standing there with a whip. This is right, this is wrong, this shouldn't be, and this should be. If that happens, can it be seen as one of the functions of the mind, the conditioned mind? Because all that we've been talking about is conditioned. Conditions have brought it about, conditions which happened under the influence of praise or blame, reward or punishment. Maybe so far back that we don't even remember it, but the reactions are still there. The fear or the pain can still be evoked, even though we don't remember the incident that laid down the first pattern. But we don't have to remember the first incident. It's right here in the reactions, and can they be attended to with such freshness? Seen for what they are, without thinking they shouldn't be, or needn't be, or couldn't be, or whatever. All these attitudes we bring to what we see. And maybe at this point, one may be wondering, what is this attention? What is this seeing, this awareness, which doesn't judge, which is cut loose from the past, disconnected, free. Free to listen and look. Can one listen right now? Without knowing what to listen to, not knowing, just listening. We will end here for today.